Perfect. All right. So we'll start with the Infrastructure and Development Department. And if you could just state your name and your title for the record, and then we'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, Nick Fortick, Infrastructure Development Director. Again, I don't have a ton probably compared to some of the other departments. I didn't really make a lot of changes to what we had in terms of the operating expense budgets. Really no changes, no additions recommended at this point. We're still kind of in the stage of assessing what's going on, making sure we fill existing positions. So a little bit of jogging around some of the expense numbers in terms of more of a focus on training for the staff, because we have some younger staff, and make sure that gets done. That's a priority. It has been since I've been here. But otherwise, really, no changes there have been previously. A few months ago, I think some shifts from one department to another, so I think those are kind of continuing to be reflected. But otherwise, no major shifts. And it's kind of the biggest thing. So I don't have new positions, new anything that I've been asking for. And then we kind of maintain the same capital improvement plan projects. So a lot of things have been lingering, I think you all know, for a number of years, because trouble with funding some of the projects in the department are big. But and we're going to try to get a couple of the projects done. It looks like we have money for one of the big bridge projects. Those are the kind of biggest high dollar items, and we have kind of deals with the state where we can get 20% put in on the Naylor Mill Bridge specifically. So it looks like it's made to the budget, so we can get the 20% that we need to have a match of the $2.8 million from them. So that's our current estimate. Hopefully it's still good. A couple of years old. We're going to keep going into that as we finalize design. $3.5 million project. And if we have the $700,000 that we're able to put in, then hopefully that's something that we can get done, because there are a few big bridges in the city, and it's sort of important to get them done. There's a Mill Street Bridge project too. That's again a priority
for you. I'm glad you brought up the Naylor Mill Bridge. What is, and not to put you on the spot, what is the work that's being done to that one? I travel across that one a lot, and it's
full replacement of that bridge.
Full replacement. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why we're in the millions.
It is. Oh yeah. Yes. It's narrow, and so.
And there are complications type work area. There's utilities going across. It's stormwater being traversed, and
then we have the expansion with our the water. We did some expansion, the water and sewer. Yeah, the paleo and everything there.
Right in the same area.
Wow.
So, so and that's obviously going to be a big impact. A lot of community notice coordination when that happens. That's going to be a nightmare for travel and everything when it happens.
Did I hear you say you needed more training for some of the new employees?
I did say that's something that we kind of like to make sure we have professional development and whatnot for staff that's in. Yeah.
One of the things that we started about 6 months ago was to try and get a printout or a spreadsheet of both infrastructure projects and development projects that were priorities and where they were in the process, that were designed or funded or both. And then we're slowly trying to kind of more smartly go about the internal projects like Waterside, our field ops building, both bridges in the park and in the one over by the pedestrian bridge. Do a thorough scope, but put ourselves in a position to be able to bid those out or construct those smartly where the budget doesn't lose control. And it's my belief that we'll have some residual funds left over on all those projects over the current budget. That said, that's hopeful, but I think I'm pretty confident saying that we can recycle and use for other projects, which I think would be a good thing for the city. So I think they've done a good job. We're getting there. We're slowly refining what's it going to look like. We're hopefully turning it into a dashboard that you can click on and kind of go through. I have to say that DID is like a whack-a-mole, man, because there's a lot going on all the time on both sides of the aisle, and so getting that to a definable, programmable, accessible, logical process is going to be challenging, but I think we're getting there. So.
Thank you, Mayor.
How much money do you think you would need for training? How much?
I see you have budgeted 37.5. Is that enough?
And when we have across the department, across the different accounts, so we have a decent amount of money, but part of it is also, and now at the end of the fiscal year, trying to use residual money from open positions. So it's something I kind of bake into my mind that it'll be there and available that I want to get for people, but it's sort of it's not something to me that you can really put a hard figure on because there's so many different types of things, different people are advancing in different ways. So, but I think it's a good start, and I'm kind of happy with it.
And I appreciate you making it, because again, like we've been saying, but it's those small things. And so for a newer or for an employee that wants to advance or be professionally developed, if we're putting that if we're putting that incentive towards them, then that's enough to keep them, retain them, or want to move up or move to different departments.
One other thing, so there's specialized training that Nick is talking about specifically with training, but we are also through our HR department, where with Casey and with John are working through additional supervisory training, some other onboarding items that are going to help just with staffing in general and helping organizational stuff. So training is spread out in a couple different areas, but for people who are following along, we're in the 31,000 org account on page 21. So,
Thanks,
yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes scroll.
Sorry. So then no. So not under building permissions.
He actually manages a lot of
Yeah.
them.
So you have a couple different.
Yeah, we got a number.
Yeah, if we can just go through the numbers like one at a time and just kind of do it in a
So then
little
training.
Yeah, and his
37.
as a reminder, DID is one of the
Accounting.
few departments that's actually spread into water and sewer too. So there's part of his team is paid for out of the water and sewer account. So it's several accounts, and some of it is piecemeal together.
So the bulk of the department's paid. It's split a third from the engineering account, which is from the general fund, a third from the water, and a third from the sewer. So that pays for about half to 2/3 of the department in terms of salaries and everything that goes with it, like trainings and whatnot. And then we also have a BPI account that's kind of from the vestigial BPI department from, I guess, pre-2017 merger, which is basically the buildings department who issues building permits and does the inspections, plumbing inspections, all of that. Anytime somebody wants to build a fence, whatever, that's the group on the second floor, essentially, of this building. And they're mostly paid for out of that. And then we also have a planning account, or rather 19,000, which really exists just to pay for the city planner. I think these are issues that in the future we're going to want to hopefully try to clean up, but it's sort of existing now, and we're continuing to roll with it.
We had all these orgs, it's easier to hide money, so that's why.
Yeah.
I can't believe you can juggle all. There's
said that
different areas.
Yeah.
No, it's as we joke about it a little bit, but it's one of the question of the historical funding and the tracking of it. So we do have it split up. There's some financial implications of it as you look in auditing. If you consolidate it into accounts, it's easier for us to think about it, but you lose some of the history. It's some of the moving from thing to. So if you have to think about it, and then there's also some reporting restrictions, specifically in field operations when it comes to public safety and traffic. But we have the ability to potentially consolidate. That is if we want to talk about that at some point, but you will potentially lose that history of consolidating. But we do have it's very splintered when you look at what DID, again, in 2017, when we reorganized, we didn't reorganize necessarily all of our orgs. What we ended up doing is we allowed for the grouping of the org so that we have flexibility within each department from a funding standpoint, but they still live in different orgs. So it is a little bit of all over the place when it looks at
It kind of goes back to that mental health thing with HR back and forth. Amir's office, so it's back and forth.
Yes.
It's a game of Twister.
I have just a few questions. One, you spoke about the salaries and the positions. Can you speak? I know that you all are going to potentially have some reorg there. Can you speak to that? And then also, I know that you all have moved the street maintenance line item from engineering to then streets. And then I just have a question for admin. So we talk about the maintenance and the dollars used. If we look at 31,000 account 534318 street maintenance, again, it was budgeted for 850, but the actuals were at 628. And then curb and gutter budgeted for 175, 18,000 used. So this is the question I have is,
I can speak to that a little
Yes.
bit, and to the
Why, I
concrete
guess.
one that's only 18,000 out of 175. part of it was just the timing of how the contracts worked out. Our contracts last for either a year, sometimes they're extended up to 2-3 years. That one had to be rebid out. That happened kind of in the late fall into the winter time. So the contract basically didn't exist that work could be awarded off of up until recently, the past couple months really. And so now it's the exercise of between the field operations department kind of controlling that account, our department helping select locations and identify where infill sidewalk, replacement sidewalk might be needed, and along with involvement from the mayor's office, all of you, as we get input from the public, and seeing how that money can be spent. So there's really a timing issue on that one, why we saw that was quite a bit lower at this point.
Some of this, when you see actuals, it doesn't actually really include encumbered funds. So,
And this report's through April.
Oh,
so there's still
we had
some
fiscal
additional
year
work. And,
ending.
Carroll Street is going to be paved out of this money too. So there's more to come. So I think we're going to absolutely come close to hitting those numbers.
Yes.
I just want to rewind a minute. When we were talking about projects earlier, that there was a lot of projects. Mayor Taylor, can you tell, what do you mean there's been some things on both sides of the aisle? Like, you're explaining something and I disconnected.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
got my wire crossed.
There's two different buckets. Like there's infrastructure projects related to the city, like waterside, field ops. Those are all public sector stuff. Then there's the private development projects, and so they're in different stages and approvals and design and redesigns, and so same thing on our side. A lot of our stuff, we've got a lot of dusty money laying around for projects that have, waterside should have been done. It's been bid out 4 times. It's crazy. The field ops has been hanging around for a long time. It's crazy. We're working to refine that scope and get those projects out and get them built. So that's what I was getting at.
Oh, thank you. So the other thing is, I see here that you have the Green Team and BPAC. They have $2,000, which is great. Does every committee have allocated money? I didn't see like the Human Rights Committee. I don't know where that's at. If they had $2,000, or the Youth Committee, or any of our committees for that, the Parks Committee. Does each committee get $2,000? Because that's for committees, right?
Yeah, those are for our 2 committees. Those are the only 2
Yeah,
I
that's what I heard.
really know about. I can quickly speak to those that
You have fun.
yeah, they funds with those ones. I didn't want to make a recommendation at this early stage, but they haven't been that really aggressive necessarily at budgeting the funds and having plans for spending them. So I think it's maybe worth reviewing in the next couple of years.
Well, I don't think that they know they have funds.
No, they do. They do. We
Okay,
talk about them in the
these two
meeting.
have
Yeah,
funds?
yeah.
What
Yeah,
about?
well, I know the Green Team does. I was going to ask,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
is that number accurate currently? Because I know they just did a bunch for the third Friday, so I didn't know if that reflected.
They did make a purchase recently, so I know as that year's
Yeah.
coming to an end, they're aware that the funds are going to run out for the year, so they are trying to.
They're usually pretty good about using their funds up in some way or another.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get in a better position with them to make sure that if the city's allocating a couple of grand, decent amount of money, that they actually have plans going into the year
Use it.
for it, of how, rather than scramble to spend, which should be for maybe leftover money, not for the bulk of the budget.
How about the other committees across the city?
Sure. They no. You had mentioned DAC yesterday. That's how this would be funded. We would be able to create an account. The other ones do not have funding allocated for them right now. I think it is a scenario in which if we knew what they would use it for, or had a desire that it's something that we could entertain. With some of the other committees, there's funding that's already allocated, like WIDAC, for example, we have HCDD here in a minute. We already have funding set aside for a lot of the youth programming and stuff, so that's typically how those activities can be funded. But it's something we could definitely talk about a little bit more if you want to.
I know when I was on HREC, this was 7 years ago, we were if we had funding. So I think you have to have that initial request, but we should almost just kickstart our committees with, I don't know, 250 or, you know what I mean, just to, because it was always like if we had funding, we could go and purchase, flyers and do this, or, a banner or something like this. But now, I mean, I'm sure they had an initial request, but they're getting $2,000 every year which is unfortunate for all of our committees not to have a little pocket of money just to use. And this is just me personally when I was on Human Rights Advisory Committee.
I can speak to, when the Green Team actually coordinated with the Disability Advisory Committee and created a program where they were giving out reusable bags built for wheelchairs. They worked with an organization that had them and were able to purchase some and that sort of thing. So, I mean, if both of the committees had access to funds, I think that you'd see both of them doing a lot more. And I think, having that cross-pollination between the committees would be great, because the Green Team especially has a lot of crossover power with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, the Disability Advisory Committee, and vice versa. I mean, like there's a lot of cross-pollination possible with all of our committees. And I think, there's something to be said with giving all of them access to something.
We can add that to our list for general discussions at the end. Some of the other stakeholder mayor's committees do not run through Nick's team, so
Yes,
but we can add. I can get the list. We can talk about it, and then we can talk about a funding amount. If it's something that you all end up wanting to do, we'll just add it to our list, and I'll start working on that. Does that work for you, Councilwoman Blake?
Thank you.
Any other items?
That was it
Okay.
for me.
Anything else? Oh, yes, please. You have something?
No.
Oh, anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
No? There are no other questions? Mr. Wojtek, thank you, and thank you, department, for what you're doing. We know you're oh, no, we have a question about the positions in the South.
Oh, yeah, you
Yes,
started
yes.
asking for.
Yes. Sorry. Look, we get out of there. Yeah, he's like,
What a
I think to
trick.
speak to that, the biggest thing I
Yes.
could say is that I've been trying to impart on these guys is that the most helpful thing is to have flexibility, and we already had some existing flexibility in our authorized position chart where you could basically use one bucket of people to hire one position or another. The existing example of that was between project engineers, project managers. So if an opening comes up amongst those positions, sort of give me, the department, everybody flexibility to say, hey, we might need this one more than the other, and just trying to put in more examples of that where we can sort of have that flexibility, like, hey, engineer leaves, maybe we need a planner instead to replace them because that workload's higher. So trying to see what we can do, be creative with that.
That makes
More
sense.
flexibility. So
yeah,
that's
thank you for
kind of
bringing it up, and
yeah.
thank you all for being flexible with that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So
Good.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you guys.
30 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Wojtek.